The last few days we've been debuting gameplay here up on the channel for different maps within World War II's DLC 2, The War Machine, coming out for PlayStation 4 on Tuesday, and then 30 days later for Xbox One and PC. So across the board we ended up already talking about Egypt and then Dunkirk, and within this one we're going to be debuting Operation Husky for you guys here today. Today we're going to be taking a look at 7 different things you need to know about with Operation Husky. There's some things that are general and relative to the map overall, and then some specific things that might be a little bit helpful going into the map and your play experience with it come Tuesday, and then maybe 30 days later if you're not on PlayStation 4. But regardless, I want to take a look at 7 different things that you guys should keep an eye out for and definitely have in your mind going into this map for when the DLC launches for your respective consoles. So that said, let's jump right into it. The first thing, we'll start out with a general blanket statement about the night map, because this is the first time that we've seen a night map in Call of Duty in quite some time. And World War II seemingly tried to introduce a little bit more mechanics than we're normally used to in multiplayer with this map in particular. We see that we have the flying sequence, in which we'll get to that in just a second, but that's something that was also thrown in the mix here, but we haven't seen a night map in Call of Duty in absolute ages. So it's nice to see a little bit of that return, something that is just a different ambiance to it, but it makes for some tricky play. There was one sequence of events where I actually do believe that it was because of the shadows that were in the map that I actually couldn't see somebody prone in a bush at one point in time, but other than that, it doesn't really affect your gameplay all that much, just some cool aesthetics to it. The second thing we're going to be talking about here with this one deals with the 3 different locations for this map in particular. So the first thing you have to do is you have to end up capturing intel, then you transmit data, and then you escort your bomber, or I guess on the opposite side of the spectrum, you want to make sure the intel is not captured, you want to make sure the data is not transmitted, and you want to take out the bombers as well if you're on the defensive. But for the first part where you capture intel, it's literally just a capture the flag sort of mechanic, where you have 3 different pieces of intel you need to pick up and then escort back to the main church on that first hill. And for whatever reason, whenever I played it, my team couldn't really get all things together. I think we only advanced a couple of times here out of this, but there are a lot of different places where you will run into players that are just either camping it out or have a very much so strong stranglehold on that sort of lane of the map. So be conscious of that, push up with your team. But the first one is of course just to capture the flag or intel in that sense 3 times over. When you get to the second stage, that's where you need to transmit the data, and this is something in which I was curious how this would play out going into this, but it's essentially one giant hard point. You end up flooding into barn. The defenders can come from the bottom of the barn, the side of the barn, or the top of the barn, and then you can end up pushing into the barn from top, back far side, or from bottom. So it's a little bit of an even keel situation where everybody has the same entry locations, but just on opposite sides of the building. It is something though that I will say this gets incredibly hectic. When you have 4, 5, 6 people from each team gunning for each other in that small area, it gets to be pretty crazy. And of course, you'll see that Molotovs come in handy, you'll see that grenades come in handy, you'll see that LMGs come in handy. It's a good thing that deaths are not tracked in war, because you might end up dying a lot if you do play the objective here for this one. And the final part here to this one is simply the escort bomber, in which we end up entering the flying sequence, which takes a little bit of time if you end up completing the second stage of the war objectives. It takes about a 10-second delay or so to jump into your fighter pilots, but it's something that will just transition to a black screen, and then you'll end up being in your fighter pilots. And that's essentially it. But we'll break down that a little bit further here at that one, but that is the 3 portions of this war map. We don't have any more. It's not like Operation Breakout where we have 4. Those are your 3 positions you'll have during this map in its entirety. The next thing I want to talk about deals a little bit with tripwires and Molotovs, because this is something that a lot of people actually caught this in the initial trailer, that you saw that we have Molotovs in war, which of course is kind of strange because that's normally just a regular score streak reserved for regular multiplayer. We've seen flamethrowers in war, but Molotovs was a new thing. So people caught that out of the trailer. That's something in which they're available for pickup on both the offensive and defensive sides, but at different points in the map. So at first, on the offensive side, you'll be able to pick those up initially. There'll be some boxes in and around church in which you can end up using those to go on the offensive and to assault the bunker, if you want to call it that one. And then you can also get Molotovs on the defending side of barn whenever you're on that second stage of this map in particular. Now, the other thing that you will notice that you can end up picking up are tripwires, which again is something that I thought we picked up in the trailer. We ended up getting that correct, and that's something in which it takes about a 2-second time to plant them on a wall, but these are ones that are very useful. You only get one of these at a time, so you can't drop multiple at once, but you can go back and get more. but tripwires are something that are incredibly useful. And that leads me into my next thing that I want to talk about, is that tripwires in particular actually can't be dodged, which is unfortunate, but there's not anything in which you can end up, say, spotting it and running through it like you can with a bouncing Betty on an S-mine, where you can drop prone and that'll only give you a little bit of damage. As it stands right now, I tried to test this out a little bit, it didn't seem like it worked at all, but there seems to be no way that you can avoid dying to trip mines. It's just automatic, you blow up immediately, and therefore it costs you any push you had up on the objective, and for defending side, well, it's incredibly useful. So keep your eyes open for those ones. They are much larger than that of the S-mines within World War II, so if you end up checking the walls for the doorways, you might be able to spot these here, in which you can be a little bit more cautious for them, but of course, if you're just running in, may the COD gods have mercy on your soul. But that said, let's jump into the next thing in which we are going to start talking about, that being the flying sequences within World War II and Operation Husky. A little bit of a blanket statement here at this one, giving you guys some general information on how the flying works itself. It is all completely off rails, but there is sort of a perimeter in which you can not go out of, very similar to how you can if there was, say, no barriers allowing you to leave a map in multiplayer. If you end up going too far out of the battle zone, it'll say once again to return back to the battlefield, and then you'll be prompted with that countdown timer, to which if you don't end up getting back into the playfield in that current time, well, then you end up blowing up and you end up just dying. So that's something that there is, once again, a boundary here for what the play area is, but other than that, it's completely off rails, which is great. You can end up going as freely as you choose. You can do as many barrel rolls, different spins, all sorts of stuff. It's all completely up to you. But the one big thing that I do want to mention into, getting more so once again back into the specifics, is the next thing to talk about, that being the flight controls, because these are actually inverted compared to what you might normally be used to. So if you end up playing on this, you might have some trouble immediately adjusting to this. Like myself, I still, after say 4 or 5 games of playing it in a row, could not get the hang of it for whatever reason. It just did not click with me. I eventually, I think in our last playthrough, ended up starting to get a little bit of it, but it took me that long to get used to it. Maybe that's just me. You guys probably will jump right into it as quick as possible and have no issues whatsoever, but it is something in which the controls are inverted, so you might have a little bit of problems aiming at the very beginning. So just be careful of that, be wary of that. But the next thing I want to talk about, it deals a little bit with a streak that happens within the fighting sequences in the dogfights. That being the fact where if you can get 4 kills in the fighter pilot without dying, you end up getting a flak gun streak that you can end up using, which takes out 1, maybe 2 or 3 different planes on the enemy side as well. We didn't see this happen too much, so I couldn't tell you exactly how many times we ended up getting taken out. I don't know if it wipes your entire team off the board for that one specific life or what it does, but it does end up taking out some planes, because I recognize hearing it from the announcer, and then I ended up dying at one point in time to it as well. So 4 kill streak with that one. Each kill will grant you 40 scores, so it's a 140 score streak on that. But again, if you're not adjusted to it, chances are you won't really get close to that. Like myself, I did not get close to that. I'm okay with admitting it. The final thing that I'm going to talk about here before we wrap this one up and give you guys my general thoughts on the map overall is that there are a lot of different places to post up. And that's the one thing that I'm probably the only negative takeaway I have from this, is that there were a lot of situations where I got out-camped hard in some cases. There were a lot of different gameplay scenarios out of our run-throughs at the studio where there were people just posted up with LMGs and I could not push out. And I think that's one of the reasons why my attacking end wasn't so fruitful, is because when we were trying to siege the bunker and then get the intel to relay back to the church so that we could capture that, well, we couldn't really even get past the main street because we were just getting gunned down by people with LMGs and windows and on terraces and balconies, all that kind of stuff. So it did get slightly irritating at times, but again, that I guess can be expected with any single map. There's always going to be those situations that can happen. It just comes down to the players you encounter, I guess. But regardless, the people we played against, they were smart enough to be able to realize what worked and what didn't. So that said, that is the 7 things I want you guys to keep in mind here for World War II's Operation Husky, a part of DLC 2, The War Machine, coming out for PlayStation 4 this Tuesday, then 30 days later for Xbox One and PC. But overall general thoughts before we wrap this up, honestly, I really enjoyed it. It was a nice curveball compared to what we're normally used to in terms of the war maps. The combination of a CTF hardpoint situation and a brand new mechanic of flying in multiplayer. Yes, I know that was in campaign. Some people talked about that in comments in which we mentioned that before, but I know it wasn't campaign, but for the sake of multiplayer, it's the first time, so it's a cool introduction for that, and overall, it's a lot of fun. These ones actually can go by rather quickly compared to other war operations, so you might be able to get more games in compared to other ones, but regardless, a lot of fun. If you guys are going to pick up the DLC maps, I definitely recommend trying it out, and of course, there's probably going to be a 24/7 playlist for this with double XP, probably the week starting with the DLC launch and then going for a week after, so stick around in that if you guys want to try it out and of course enjoy it a little bit further. But that said, that's where we're gonna wrap it up here with this one, so hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, hopefully you guys enjoyed this little breakdown and look at Operation Husky, a part of DLC 2 The War Machine, and if you guys did, make sure you drop a like down below. Love to get your thoughts and feedback down there in the comment section as well, so if there's anything in particular you liked, you didn't like, whatever it may be, feel free to let me know down there in the comment section down below. But that's it, we're gonna be continuing all the DLC coverage here for World War II, DLC 2 The War Machine, so if you guys are interested in all that, make sure you stick around here right up on the channel, and of course, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding any of that. So, all that said, Natalie, hope you guys had a fantastic day. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care, and peace.